Hi everyone, welcome to the LeaderSeries Roundtable. This is, as I've said previously on our previous episode, this is a review session. We have done many episodes, and when we reviewed it, kind of going back, we thought to ourselves, we've spoken to so many great people within business and within leadership and within technology. Why not bring some of the best ones back for a halfway through the decade review chat? And today we are talking to 4 cyber security leaders. Obviously, GCS is big in cyber. It's one of our fastest growing divisions. And it's also something, obviously, within technology, particularly in the last 5 years, that has taken on huge importance, both in society, but also in business. And these are 4 people that can really help us to understand that, to understand where we're at, but also where it's going. And I think from talking to them, it's very exciting, but also quite scary sometimes. So I'm sure a few of you will listen to this and be thinking about how you can protect your businesses better, or thinking that it's all a lost cause. But I think that's what we will find out. But so we've got Niamh, Jim, Francis, and Robert with us today.
Hi, I'm Rob Sugrue. I'm the Group Head of Information and Cybersecurity at Next 15. Next 15 is a really interesting organisation made up of lots of smaller businesses that are focusing in business enablement, marketing, and lots of exciting sort of spaces in data analysis as well. I have an interesting role where I wouldn't say herd cats, but certainly make sure that I'm bringing all of those entities together, making sure that they've got a good framework for cybersecurity that they're following, and really supporting and helping them do the best they can to protect their own area of the business in order to protect us as a group.
Hi everyone, I'm delighted to be here taking part in the GCS Leadership Series Roundtable. My name is Francis Gorman. I'm the host of the Entropy podcast, and I'm the Principal Security Architect at Bank of Ireland, where my day-to-day accountabilities include helping to formulate our cyber strategy, looking at horizon threats such as AI adoption and post-quantum readiness, and mobilizing and identifying the key initiatives that we need to execute across our demand plan to meet our strategic ambition in the security space.
I'm Jim Newman. I'm the CISO at Capco. We're a management consultancy, global organization with about 8,000 consultants. My role isn't a consulting role with our clients, it's internal. So I look after our systems and I'm only involved with client engagements when something has gone wrong somewhere else.
I think my first question for you guys is just reviewing the year. What do you think the most important thing in cyber that has happened in 2025? I think I'll go to you first, Niamh. What do you think?
For 2025, I think the most important thing that happened was that we saw big brand cyber security companies investing in AI companies, so mergers and acquisitions happening. The 2 significant ones were Protect AI being bought by Palo Alto, and then also F5 investing in Calypso AI. And to me, that signals to the market the importance of cyber innovation, looking at the future or the emerging threat landscape, and how the industry is investing in startups to really enable the industry move forward and protect businesses no matter what industry you're operating in. So that was significant because it signals that AI is here to stay, but AI is here to stay and help the cybersecurity industry fight against cybercrime, but also the need for continuous investment in tooling and technologies that are architected to protect against those latest and greatest threats that we're seeing around AI, and then the forthcoming ones around digital assets and quantum. I think we're going to see startups hitting the market next year around those technologies.
Fantastic, thanks, Niamh. And yeah, we've definitely seen the 2 key areas that GCS work in are AI and cyber. Interesting, 2 of the main topics within these LeaderSeries Roundtables, and the convergence of both and the way both drive each other on is a real trend that we've seen as well. Jim, what do you think?
So, I mean, for me, it's less strategic, less high level, and more about the rise of AI within our own companies. So, not just in terms of, we've seen an uptick in phishing emails or an uptick in deepfakes, but about the use of AI within our own companies. And it's age-old problems, it's shadow IT, it's users providing data access to things that they wouldn't normally have, making sure that DLPs are in control. But for me, certainly within the role that I hold in the organization, arguably the biggest kind of shift and thing that we're having to address is that use of AI, the business strategy of how to govern and how to manage and deal with that. Because we're a management consulting organization, how do we address what is an existential threat to the business while addressing all of the governance and the security issues that we have with handling it internally? We look at the training aspects and trying to make sure that the staff within our company know the risks of what they're doing and how they're deploying it, and trying to get teams to understand their responsibility and the kind of classic you're on the hook for what comes out of this system.
And Francis, you obviously, as well as kind of working within the industry, run a podcast which I know is talking quite a lot within those core kind of areas, cyber, but also how it relates to kind of AI and automation. So what do you think, and what have you seen from the people you've been speaking to on the Entropy podcast this year?
Thanks, David. I suppose there's been a lot of things across the industry that have caught my attention this year. One is the increased supply chain as a core attack vector. We saw that across the UK retail sector, and interestingly, Jaguar, which required excess of 1.5 billion of a government bailout to keep almost 200,000 people employed as part of its overarching supply chain, was a really key indicator of the size and impact. I think it's the first time we saw a cyber attack that materialized and had an actual impact on a country's GDP, which was fascinating to see play out in real time, but also reaffirms the significance of what happens when all of this can go wrong. Outside of that, I think AI has obviously been a really key instrument in terms of businesses looking at it to utilize in terms of productivity. There's been a lot of, I suppose, blinkers on in terms of let's AI it rather than is AI the right tool, and that creates security headaches in and of itself. And then the Entropy carried out a couple of reports this year that were really insightful in terms of the evolution of the attack surface and new threat vectors that are being brought about by AI. One was where they looked at misaligned AI as an insider threat, which is a fascinating concept where let's just set up a simulated environment. They plant some details within that environment to let the LLM read at the top level account. Those emails identified a number of aspects. One was the executives were looking to shut down that system at 5 o'clock on a business day. And two, the executives were also having affairs and some nefarious behaviors going on within the company in this simulated environment. In all cases tested against all of the benchmark large language models, the AI went to extort the executive to preserve itself, which was a really interesting finding, and that was thematic was also quite interesting to look at. And the second was the identification of anthropic systems being used to carry out a systematic attack against a number of companies downstream in real time with limited human intervention, which again was quite interesting to see from the evolution of how this may impact into 26 and 27 as these technologies get even more pervasive.
And I definitely thought this would be something that we would talk about, because in these technologies, we know there's so much investment going into them, but at the same time, the more investment you put into them, the more you have to invest to protect from them. So it's really interesting to hear you guys at the coalface, seeing that. Rob, what do you think from this last 12 months?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, drawing on everything that we've just spoken about there, I think, AI, whether you're attacking or defending, is a race to the top. At the moment, the attackers seem to have the upper hand. And, I think we need to continue to invest in AI to defend ourselves. But, putting that technology side and the advancements we've seen in technology as to one side, I think the human element has really risen to the surface as well this year. With the earlier attacks in April, May of Marks and Spencer's and the Co-op, we saw the social engineering element really creeping to the fore. And a lot of that is enabled, I think, through, the deep fake, the AI capability, the reconnaissance that an attacker can do using these AI tools. It's making it very easy to get to a point where an attacker has all of those key pieces of information that they need to be able to pick up the phone, speak to somebody on the help desk, and, break their way in very easily, because as humans, we want to help people. So there's been a lot from our side about revisiting the awareness and education of ourselves as the human firewall, and the importance of that element in an environment where, ironically, it's the technology that is exceeding and moving so fast into the future. So it is really this sort of keeping the human in the loop. And I know when we talk AI, that's really important anyway, from using AI to always having that human oversight, but equally the importance of the human to make those critical decisions and be educated as well about how those attackers can come in and make that compromise on us as the fleshy bits that sit in front of the computer screens.
Yeah, because I guess, and this is the next question, when you think about it, all of these things are there to try to kind of trip us up and make things more difficult for us. So it's really how these new tools come in, but also how well we humans, like you said, the fleshy bits, I like that, Rob, are equipped to kind of deal with that. So you guys obviously work at a senior level within your organizations, and you've seen, cyber increase in importance and, visibility during your careers. So I think from my first question for you guys to discuss is cyber risk itself. We obviously know what the outcomes are. Has it become more of a boardroom issue, and is it discussed these levels, and is it a priority, or is it still seen as an IT problem? I know obviously you guys work within your organization, so you couldn't possibly comment on whether your organization is doing right or not. So I guess this is theoretical. But what do you think? Jim, you obviously work a lot with, companies in this way and consult through. So what do you see?
I was going to say, I've got a take on this, and obviously my role within Capco, within my current organization, is an internal CISO role. I don't work with our clients. I don't provide consulting services, but I've led security in fintechs and in regulated industries, and there, cyber is a boardroom issue. Risk is very, very clearly kind of managed, and the operational maturity in terms of the reporting lines and how it's handled is a little different. In some of the commercial organizations that I've worked in, where there is less of a regulated angle, or in unregulated businesses, or those with less exposure to it, it tends to be delegated down, and it's seen as an IT problem, as an IT issue. Those things where we've argued for ages, we need a seat at the table. We don't necessarily need a seat at the table. We need the right influence. The board needs to understand the risks that come with it. So I think we're still, although things are better than they were, we are still in this world where if you're regulated, actually the boards are really acutely aware of not just cyber risk, but they see it as business risk, as they should. They understand the impacts of downtime. They understand, what happens with data loss. And for others, unless you have an incident that leads to some kind of breach of trust with your clients, there isn't the same impetus, and there isn't the same impact. And we look at cyber incidents that we've had recently that are driven by the third parties on which we rely on, particularly things like Cloudflare, where an outage or downtime with that third party we rely on has got impacts on customer-facing systems. That helps to kind of focus the mind. But I think unless you've got the attention of the board on, okay, that is cyber, that is, we're talking about the availability of our systems, and here is why, and this is what we need to do about resilience, we still are seeing a bit of a split and in the way that businesses are looking at it.
So you feel that it's kind of in some ways related to sectors and industries and the way the company is set up in terms of the way it's viewed. Niamh, is that how you view it?
No, not at all. Cybersecurity is a differentiator, and I see fast-paced technology companies all around the globe using it, building their trust brand, and it's from board down, recognizing it. So not highly regulated businesses, um, they know that it's their business differentiator. They know having a strong program in place with funding support from the board level down and board level overseeing it is their way to scale up, ramp up, to build the trust with the clients and to move forward. And particularly organizations and companies that are part of transformation programs where a technology product or service is going into regulated industries to really help them and to help the industry transform their business. Um, I sometimes feel as an industry professional, and I do sit on boards, that it's a tick in the box from a regulatory perspective, and that's just me as an industry professional. Oh, the board needs training on DORA, for an example. They need to know about what that means, or they need to do their annual training or their half yearly training around cyber security. And I just think we exist as professionals, as an industry, because we're enabling our business to move forward, protecting their data, protecting the services. So, it's there. It's a business strategy. It's just how the company or the organization is using it. But I am seeing a big differentiator in CEOs and boards that actually look at cybersecurity as a business strategy, building out their trust brand, taking a leading edge in the market as they grow and scale their businesses.
Rob, you work with quite a lot of like startup businesses your company kind of invests in and works with. So how do you see that maybe more as like different levels and companies as they grow, that the attitude towards risk changes?
Yeah, I think something we've certainly seen is a real focus on how well a business protects itself, be that a small startup organization or a well-established business that's looking to grow and transform. Certainly, when we've looked at the life cycle of a business, the importance of cybersecurity has very much come to the fore. It's much more a component of business operations now than I think it ever has been, and whether that is through awareness, more general awareness of high level attacks that we've seen, or if it's actually the financial drive that organizations see the benefit of having particular accreditation or standards, or the ability to answer a tender request with really strong answers to those cybersecurity questions that people ask. It has become not only to protect the business, but to enable the business. And I think that's a real shift we're seeing. And even our smaller organizations, it's not expensive now to have good cybersecurity fundamentals in place, and making sure that businesses, even if they've only got a couple of tools, but have the right ethos, the right mentality around how they're approaching cybersecurity and how they see that needs to scale as the business grows, is critical. So I think it's certainly, I think it's obviously always a technical problem because we have to implement and maintain these systems, but it has certainly got much more attention as a business operational thing that we need to make sure is right to enable growth, to enable good function with a business and stability, because it not only attracts business, it secures business.
Francis, what's your opinion on this? Because obviously it seems that there's different opinions on whether it has become a board issue or is still kind of seen as a technology issue. What do you see?
I think the board is much more a board issue now than it is a technology issue, because the board understand it as I say, that business enabler. It's what's going to help a business grow. And if you haven't got a fundamental of cybersecurity and you're sitting at board level and you're ignoring it, you are driving that business the wrong way. And I think the majority of boards that I've spoken with and executives I've spoken with are of that same opinion. They have to have that cyber awareness in their business. They have to have cyber awareness at board level.
As Niamh says, building that trust brand. What do you think, Francis?
I think it's very specific to the sector at the moment. As I said, pointed out what happened in the retail sector this year. So there's obviously some work to do and improvements in that side around supply chain, etc. Regulated entities are held to a certain bar, and there's that oversight and rigor around what's there and what's not there. And I think the introduction of DORA and some of the personal accountabilities that came into legislation in the last year or so, that again makes it, I suppose, in the best interest of the executives to ensure that they have a handle on their cybersecurity programs. But in saying that, it's a two-way street. If your security team can't ensure that the business value is being derived and being communicated properly, there may be that assumption that everything is good. So I think it's the communication aspect is really key. I think we need to keep a very clear eye on the evolving attack surface, because it is changing at a dramatic speed at the moment. Particularly if we look at things like vulnerabilities and how they can be picked up and executed on as AI evolves. I think that's going to get into a really kind of key watch point into the coming months and years. How do we react with machine speed to human processes without changes there? So the board are there to oversee the business. Security is a business enabler, but it's a two-way communication to ensure that clarity and that value is derived between both sides of both the technology and the business aspects of the enterprise.
Jim, do you want to pick up on what Niamh said there? Because obviously maybe different points of view there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of when Niamh raised her point, I don't disagree with what Niamh has to say. I see certainly startups that are not regulated businesses that get it, that understand and use it as a strategic lever for commercial reasons as well as for any other. And I think where I was trying to kind of explain the difference that I've seen and anecdotally, where I've seen the problem is that there are businesses who are doing it because there are compliance reasons. It's the checkbox exercise. And I very much see that as missing the point. At the same time, there are businesses who, because there is no regulation, there is no requirement, that they're not even following the checkbox, and so it's trying to get to a stage where those businesses who are forward-looking, who see it as this is our way of demonstrating trust, this is how we show resilience, but also readiness for change, by embracing the way in which cyber at the boardroom level is seen as an operational issue rather than a compliance checkbox exercise. That's how they move forwards. And I don't take away from any of those businesses, speak purely about how many there are out there, and we have seen a sea change in it happening, but there is still some businesses that are a bit slower to adopt it, and for whom it's very much about what is minimum viable cyber.
And I guess, Niamh, when you think about that trust brand, or that you talk about there, one of the things that comes to me is about the supply chain, right? So big organization, regulated organization, therefore must tick these boxes and think about the boardroom level. But obviously, when you're buying things, I think is what you're suggesting, when you're buying things, you need to increasingly look at what the companies you're buying are doing as well, because that can kind of come back to you. So, for instance, my question would be, running GCS, where we think we're quite good on the cyber side, I have to go through multiple hurdles to get into my systems. Is this something I should be shouting about as a business owner, as someone talking to customers?
Definitely, with all of your personal data that you hold, how you are a trust brand through your business operations that you speak to, your clients, the companies that you deal with. And I think whether you've been marketing or not, you're known to be a trusted provider from a services perspective, and SMEs as well. I think also from a board perspective, where the rubber really hits the road is in, if you take a look at your contracts. So what are you signing up to with your vendors and suppliers? And then what are your what are you offering your clients from a security services perspective as well? And I've lived through breaches, and I've seen the impact of clauses on contracts could really put put organizations out of business if they're not thought of. And I think that's where, you know, how the business operates, speaking to the contracts, the commitments that you're giving your clients, that you're asking off your vendors. If there's a disconnect there with how you're running your security program, and I've seen terms that would have unlimited liability written in them around certain items, and they're not, maybe they didn't consult with the security team on before they wrote that in, but that has huge significant impact on a business, if there is an event around cybersecurity. So I think the boards need to be aware of that, the CEO and the executive teams, because that's companies are now looking at contracts around quality cyber services that they're getting both sides. So David, I have no doubt that you're offering good services there. But if I was looking at it from a board perspective overall, from an industry perspective, I just think the contractual commitments, that combined, if you've had a significant cyber incident, could have a huge business impact and put you out of business potentially.
And then obviously could affect all the companies within your universe as well. So I guess you can't just think about yourself, you have to think about others. So I guess in some ways that leads us on to the next question, which is always an interesting one for a layperson like myself, which is in the terms of kind of breaches or like cyber events like you just said. But for me, it's really like, what's the strategy, the best strategy, do you think? So Robert, when you think about this, should companies be paying ransom? Should they be dealing and negotiating, or do you really feel like you should fight back? And I guess this links into how you've set yourself up in the first place, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's the last place anyone wants to be. I mean, the key thing is protecting yourself against these things happening. But obviously, the inevitable does, because nothing is, there's no golden bullet. It's nothing that's 100%. I think the question around paying a ransom is an interesting one. I always used to be very much in the camp of don't pay, you shouldn't pay. But I think you've seen an emergence of the professional extortionist, really. And I would advise anybody that's in that situation to seek a professional insight and professional support in one of these situations. Go to if you've got cyber insurance, speak with your cyber insurance organization. If you have a critical incident response service, leverage that, because they're going to be able to look at what's happened, understand who it is that's attacked you, understand whether, believe it or not, I can't believe I'm saying this, they are a reputable attacker, or actually if they are just a script kiddie that's operating out of a basement. I think in some
There are different levels of attackers then, Robert,
without a
isn't
doubt.
there?
I mean, this is a job. This is what some people do for a living. We're living in a world of triple extortions and all sorts of things where they'll keep coming at you. You can't trust a criminal at the end of the day for their word. They've just stolen from you. What's their word worth? However, talking to professional organizations, they will know if this attacker is somebody that will actually honor that payment, and whether the payment they're asking is of the right proportion for what they're asking to do. So they'll be able to make that value judgment as to whether you should fight back, or actually whether your business is better off paying that ransom, because it will get you back into an operational state faster than trying to unpick this and protect yourself against an ongoing threat. Now, that's a real change in my position, I think, that I've made over the last 12 months. And that is certainly because of this situation where we are seeing those different degrees of attack, the problem of triple extortion, and equally the problems of unencrypting and getting around stuff that may have occurred during that attack. So I think you've got to have those people there around you that can help when these situations happen, and rehearse those situations. Go through it, have those run books, have those playbooks, so that if that does happen to you, who you're going to call, what you're going to do, and what the business's position is on it. Because you don't want somebody saying one thing and somebody saying something else, because that's going to affect your credibility within the market. So it's about knowing where you're going and having the right support around you when these things do happen.
And I guess having a rehearsed plan means you can move faster. Francis, what do you think in regards to this?
Yeah, David, I think you have to look at what's in front of you if something like this materializes. Is there a risk to human life? Where are you located, geolocation? Because it could actually be illegal to pay the ransom in some states. The advice always is not to pay. However, there are some situations where you may just be snookered. Let's say a hospital gets taken out in life support machines or whatever, and it's time critical. And this is where, as Robert said, planning is one of the most fundamental things you can do for a scenario like this to materialize, and that is your tabletops, your BCR, the disaster recovery plans, all of those kind of key pieces. How do I recover that data? Is that data on a different network segment than my core production data? How do I restore from one data center to another, or from cloud to on-prem? Understanding all of the ways this can materialize and the different types of attack that you can see. And if we look at what's happened in most cases, it's been a phishing attack led to an identity compromise, domain admin, and then kind of silent traversal of the network laterally to start dropping packets, exfiltrate data, and then fire off the cryptography. So I think, again, it's back to the basics. Have you got MFA? Have you got strong passwords? All that kind of hygiene stuff really helps not end up in this situation. But if you do end up in the situation, having that plan well rehearsed is the key thing. And also, who are your key decision makers when this happens? Have you got an architectural team that actually understands your technology? Because the executives are going to look at this and go, we need to get back up. We're losing X million an hour a day, whatever it is. Let's switch that off or turn that on. But that could actually do more harm than good. So again, make sure you have the right mechanisms and people and processes set up, that you know how to respond, and you know how to get people rested, and other people who come in that can pick up the reins and work through, because these things can sustain for days, if not weeks.
Jim, what's the advice you give to your clients and internally?
I don't know what clients get from our consultants, but internally, it is a difficult one. Like Robert, I used to think very much of the no, you don't feed the trolls, you don't fuel the ecosystem that's coming out of it, and then actually came to understand it's a lot more subtle and nuanced. Francis's point about hospitals, what is the lesser of two evils? If paying the ransom is going to ensure that there's no longer a threat to life, well then, we would do everything we can. So I'm going to refer it back to our previous question, which is boards that actually are discussing cyber, those forward-thinking boards where you are talking about resilience, you're talking about risk. You can have these conversations ahead of time so that you already know what your decisions are. In terms of advice, it's really difficult because it is subtle and it's nuanced, and you want the experts that Robert's discussing who are then able to support you if you reach the point where actually you've been hit, all of your defenses have failed, and now you're in a position where you've got to make a decision. And it supports okay, if we have to, are they credible? Will it actually recover what we need? Will it achieve the aims? And having had the discussion at the board level first, you know whether you're ever going to get into that discussion. Having the professionals on hand means that you're then able to understand all of the data that comes into you reaching a final decision. I think you said at the start, I'm a layperson, I'm going to go over to the experts, but actually there's a huge moral and societal part of this, which I think even a layperson understands. If our business does or doesn't make a ransom payment and clients, customers are impacted as a result of it, we are both victim and defendant for the decisions that we've made, and society will judge the impact. So everybody has a view on what comes into it, and it's never as simple as yes, pay, no, don't pay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that is, and the more I take from this conversation, it is about kind of joined up thinking between every person, the lay people, the technology people. Is that how you see it, Niamh? I mean, obviously in your time in the industry, I'm sure you've seen different companies attacking in different ways, but what was your own personal opinion?
My personal opinion is that it's a business decision for the situation and time, and so it's practicing that muscle, having the right business teams and technology teams there to support around making the decision that's needed. And I see with AI in the last couple of years where people are adopting AI that uses a large volume of data. I see the next wave of ransomware attacks hitting our our AI infrastructure or through the use of AI. So it's really, really important coming into 2026 to ensure that you're having those drills around a ransomware attack that incorporate your AI or your applied AI systems, applications, products and service offerings.
So are we all kind of, is a question for everyone, constantly reviewing these processes, and like you said, Rob, your mind is changing on an ongoing basis. This how you see it as you see things happening out there. You're amending your own personal opinion.
Absolutely. I think in the same way that we continuously evaluate the attack surface, we have to continually evaluate how we approach these problems. Um, we're seeing new things every single day, and we have to adjust our position, the way of thinking, the technology we're using, process, people, everything, to make sure we have the right stance according to the new problem. There's nothing that's hanging around anymore that's going to be the same forever. It's continuously evolving, so we have to continually move with it.
So for me, the one of the big words that I hear as a recruiter is zero trust. Is this, and from what you've just said there, it seems like definitely zero trust is something that we should implement more and more strongly. Um, do you see this as one of your kind of key strategies now, Francis?
Yeah, sure, David. So zero trust is interesting. You've got the vendor take on zero trust, which is buy this product, and John Kindervag's take, which is this is a methodology that you need to apply strategically to ensure that the attack surface is limited. And he often explained it as the president's motorcade, as in the president is in the motorcade, and then you've got Secret Service agents left and right with large machine guns of some kind, and they're the policy enforcement agents. So nothing shall get to the motorcade was John's kind of description of it. Reality, how do you replicate that in an enterprise? Not as straightforward, and I think AI has made it more complex. So we've started off architecting least privileged, least trust, isolated environments, etc. And now we're looking at agentic, high permission, downstream access that wants everything, and a kind of the two are almost in conflict each other. So it's definitely a strategy for high sensitive data to ensure that it's as isolated as you can make it. Only the relevant people and resources have access to it, and you can monitor and understand any anomalies or changes to that data set or as you go. But I think as AI starts to become more prevalent and more embedded in organizations, zero trust is going to be challenged from the technology in and of itself. I think it'll be fascinating to see how that materializes over the next year or two.
Niamh, when you talk about this trust band element, do you think it's important to say that as well? I think zero trust is something that adds to that level of trust as well.
Yeah, it definitely zero trust. It's not just a buzzword; it's a methodology, it's principles. But if you're sitting at the board, the question is how do you define it for for that particular organization? How do you measure it and monitor it? And that's down to the CISO to be able to come up with a program that demonstrates they're either on their way to zero trust or they've reached it and they're maintaining it at zero trust 99% or 95 or 90%. But I think it's very important to have it defined, to monitor, either to demonstrate that you're maturing to it, or you're there and you're maintaining it.
Jim, what do you think? Is this something that you've, again, little I just talked about the ransoms, you've kind of come to believe that is correct, or is it something that you push back against?
Well, I don't think any of us would push back against it. I think the thing that we'd push back against is the way that, as Francis said, that vendors have used the term and have tacked it onto everything that's being sold. But Niamh was just saying, it's a methodology, it's a mindset, it's a principle. We're all and we all subscribe to it, and it is an evolving. The way that you deliver it is evolving, and I find it really difficult to explain to non-technical leadership how it is and what we mean when we're trying to adopt zero trust principles as a business. I still struggle to kind of articulate it. I'm not very good at defining what we do, but we've moved from kind of perimeter-based defense in depth, implicit trust to more conditional access and what's the context of things running, to identity. And with the rise of AI, we now need to kind of further enhance what our approach looks like so that we understand whether it's an authentic user, what is the purpose that something is running within one of our systems. So it's it's a thing that keeps morphing and changing and evolving, not just as technology changes, but our view of it therefore needs to respond. I mean, we all support what it is that we're trying to do and why zero trust is integral to us achieving it.
And Rob, what the thing Jim talks about there was like taking that out to the business. So how have you found the best way to talk to people about zero trust? Because for me, again, I guess I've come into this as a layperson. If you said you don't trust me and I'm the CEO, I'm going to be slightly offended straight off. So how do you deal with that tricky conversation, I guess?
Yeah, and I think it's, again, going back to something that Jim just said there. It's about educating your board, your executives, your leaders, that it is an evolving threat landscape. The things that we see today are not going to be the things that we see tomorrow, and they're certainly not the things we saw yesterday. So I think keeping your exec, your board, your leaders up to date with how the threat landscape is evolving and where problems are emerging, so they understand that shift in pattern. And I always try and draw parallels to sort of more of like a physical security side of things. A great one I always think is around car crime, because you had this situation where people would be able to break into a car and hotwire it years ago. So they put immobilizers on them and the keys. So you had to get the keys to get into the car. So people started breaking into the house to get the keys to get the car. And now all of a sudden you've got these wireless technologies. So people have intercept the signals. They then replay the signals. So you've got that kind of replay attack. So all of these things can be drawn back to a technical attack of sort of types. But it's about making sure that people understand that the criminal, the attacker, is shifting in their approach. Therefore, we need to shift in our defense. And just on the whole zero trust thing, I think it is very much of a buzzword term, but what it stands for is the key here. It's about evolving our security, evolving the areas that we're protecting, and making sure that as criminals change directions and tactics, we're already looking at how we can prevent and secure in that space. A good security program will already have some measures, but do we need to escalate those measures because it's become more of a problem?
So does anyone have, any ways that they feel is the best way to articulate this to the wider kind of population within your organization? Francis?
So I suppose, David, zero trust, and we use zero trust quite a bit in terms of our strategic intent, and essentially how I would articulate it, it's a way to contain your sensitive data in a methodology that you can understand, monitor, and manage. And I kind of think, as Niamh said, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So let's say you have data in a cloud environment and it's in an S3 bucket, and that data is sensitive. But if that S3 bucket has a global permission set and it's sharing it out, it's accessible to anyone. Whereas it has an IAM account that has MFA and other controls on it that has to be checked out through some process to get to that data, it's very sensitive. However, the business might need to access it every day, and then it becomes quite cumbersome. So how do you find the balance between the two in a way that get you what you need? And that's the key. It's the strategic methodology and the architectural decisions that you take to ensure that data is accessible by people who require it, but only people who require it. And you can start to look at windows of access and things like that as well to build up your monitoring strategy around it. So if this system's only accessed Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and if someone accesses it at 6 o'clock on a Saturday, you want to fire off security events in your SOC and have some sort of a playbook to respond to it. So it kind of takes in this model of protect, defend, monitor, all of the different aspects, and encompasses them into a strategic approach that gets applied architecturally to the target environment or system.
From my side, just as a recruiter, I think and you guys mentioned kind of the people-based side of this. We've definitely seen a lot more, push to think about the soft skills, communication skills, business functional skills within the kind of cyber repertoire that we've potentially seen before. Niamh, I know this is something that you really care about in terms of like the types of people that kind of come into cyber. Is that changed the type of person? Because you obviously need to be able to, talk to boards, talk to employees in a more non-technical, functional way to help them to understand the importance of this without blowing their minds with technology.
Thanks, David. So what I have seen is a change in CISO experiences. So I'm in the industry. I consider myself to be an old school information security professional. I learned that information was your asset, but after .com and the rise of cloud computing, we saw, or it's my observation, that a lot of security and CISOs have learned their trade around technology, all the technology certifications and the broader understanding data as an asset. The risk aspects have been dropped off, and let's face it, technology has surged with the internet, cloud computing, AI significantly. And I feel with the pressures on CISOs that and the need to have CISOs, people have ended up playing CISO roles without necessarily the business experience and the risk management experience behind them, or else really getting the opportunity to flex their professional muscle around professionalism, communication, influencing, all of that. So I think that has led then to people being in CISO roles, getting burnt out, being overwhelmed because they haven't had the technical business and professional competencies or grown into the role to be able to communicate with the various different personnels.
Excellent. And I think like this is all linking into my next question. It's something we've all spoken about thus far, which is coming of AI, not just in terms of attacks and threats, but coming of AI in terms of, like you said right from the top, Niamh, cyber companies investing in AI companies to help protect. So from your side then, Niamh, kind of straight away, do you think that AI will become better? I have my own opinion on this. I can't see it, but do you think that AI will defend better than humans, or not? I guess.
So if you look at why, or the coming about of AI, it was to complement us. And I think for those use cases in the cyber world, if it's used to complement cybersecurity professionals, 100%, it will become better. And I really think from a cybersecurity perspective, what attracts us to the industry or be successful in the industry is love of learning. So from all the different analysis of professionals that have worked for me, being part of my team, they always come out strong in their love for learning. And so I think if you can set up teams to learn about new technologies, learn about how they can apply to the jobs, whether you call it cyber innovation or what, I think you're really giving back to the industry and giving back to your organization by staying ahead. And the same goes for attackers, malicious actors. They're innovative in their approaches. If we look at how phishing has evolved over the years, if we look at ransomware attacks, it's evolving. They're staying ahead, so we have to stay ahead, one step ahead of them, and that requires dedication from professionals, and allowing people to learn around new technologies. And AI is a new technology. So for us to really complement our existing skill set, we need to focus time, attention around that.
Jim, obviously working within a company like Capco, obviously, I'm sure a big part of your services is, how we can AI enable and help our consultancies. But what do you think? Is it something that will, the key parts of cybersecurity defense will be AI, or do you think it's always going to be human based?
So I can't speak for long-term future, but Niamh's point about AI is there to augment and to facilitate and make it easier for us to be able to do things. It shouldn't be to replace the human being. It lacks the intuition, it lacks the context, but where it helps is to be able to scale and to do things. If we're dealing with attacks at machine speed, we need responses that operate at machine speed as well. The reason I say about kind of context is that many years ago, I worked in road safety, and we had data machine learning systems that were identifying where investments in road safety should be targeted. In doing that, if you are just led by the data and the AI system is only working with the data it's got at its disposal, there was an occasion where it was recommending in a huge amount of money be thrown at enforcement somewhere, and what it was missing was that breathalyzer tests happen in hospitals because they're after crashes. So all of these positive breath tests happening in hospitals, if your machine learning has not had enough time to build up that context and the institutional knowledge about the systems that it's working within, it will make recommendations that any normal practitioner will say this is not sensible. You need the human being back on the human before the loop, in the loop, after the loop. You need human beings adding that context and steering some of the decisions. But what it can do is help bring all that data together and operate extremely quickly and enable us to do more with not with fewer people, but with the volumes that we're having to deal with.
So it's seen as an enhancer, not a substitute. Francis, would you agree?
David, at the moment, I would agree. So I've often said this. I was asked this question about 6 months ago at a conference, and I said I've yet to see a CISO replace a security team with an AI-enabled kind of a assortment of apps and agents, and that is the case at the moment. I think large language models have limitations that you wouldn't necessarily want to trust your entire security oversight program with. But in saying that, if they can fix some of the limitations at the moment around hallucination and anomalies that are getting plowed out, in 3 years we might be in a very different state of affairs where artificial intelligence, whatever form it takes, in the next couple of years, may be far more effective at identifying and remediating in real time at speeds that humans just can't do. So it may become a core part of your security program. I'm not going to say it's going to replace, because trust is a key aspect of that. And I think this is what you're touching on from the human aspect. As a CEO, do I trust the machine? Or do I trust the person who's overseeing the machine? And trust is quite interesting, because I'm not sure if you've ever come across Rachel Botsman, but she's an expert in trust, and she's explained over the last number of years, trust used to be like a pyramid. We used to trust institutions and experts, and now it's moved sideways. So we're trusting algorithms and machines. So if that continues to evolve, we could be in a very different state of affairs. But at the moment, I think trust keeps the human in the loop, and the human oversees the capability.
Well, but how are you dealing with your organizations and implementing kind of AI tools? You see this as an enhancer or as a substitute?
I'm definitely down the line of enhancer. I mean, I think as many businesses, we're embracing AI to enable our business to grow. And everybody's embracing AI for that efficiency element. And I think that's exactly where we're embracing it at the moment in cyber response. It's to add to that efficiency. And it's, I mean, I remember going back 15 years when we were implementing, the first kind of SOCs where we were doing some log analysis. One of the biggest problems our analysts had at that time was what we called snow blinding. There's too many logs coming across your screen. There's too much information. But at that point in time, it was manageable if you had the right number of analysts and you would build up your rule set. So you would remove all of the noise, you'd remove all of the snow, so you could get to those events that you needed to see. Now, those numbers of events have multiplied by hundreds, if not thousands. So AI is very efficient at handling that kind of noise and just getting rid of the stuff that we don't need to worry about. But ultimately, it's doing that in a way with a lot more sort of scrutiny and insight than we would do as humans. So it's brilliant for that sort of thing. But because of the volume of attack we're seeing, we still need the stuff that needs that human analysis to be done by our humans. And they're getting to a point where they're still at capacity because there's just so much going on. So I think that's where we need it in the defensive world. What I think is really interesting, though, is where AI is being used alongside threat intelligence. And we're coming up with this sort of preemptive approach to where we might see something coming in, because it's able to handle so much information and process and give us output. We can take in what services we're using, where are the vulnerabilities that are important to our business that we might need to be concerned about? What are we seeing about in the threat intelligence world, and what sort of attacks are we seeing? So we can start to build up this is where we're seeing patterns develop, and this is where we now need to step and be preemptive in our approach. So I think there's going to be a lot of development there, but I think, as Francis was saying, I think the next 3 years are going to be very interesting. I mean, we are still really in the early days, I think, of AI development. We've come a long way and it's a fantastic tool, but I think there is so much further for it to go. And I think that's when it's going to become really interesting, when we come to looking at it as a defensive tool.
And I guess that means a lot more threats down the line. So yeah, definitely something for us to kind of be talking about more. And because of that, because of the growth of the importance of the systems, and therefore protecting those systems and the different threats and risks, and the importance of building trust, as a group, do you think that we are doing enough to regulate cyber defense strategies, or can governments, companies, the community of technology do more to do that? Who wants to maybe tackle that one first?
When you say regulate, do you mean regulate AI or regulate cybersecurity?
I mean cyber, really. I think when I say kind of regulating cyber, it's by putting as much, defenses in as possible and making companies do this. One, to protect against AI, but also to protect the importance of data, GDPR, etc., etc. So, are we doing enough to do that? Governments, society doing enough? Jim?
I don't mind stepping up and making some sweeping statements that that I'm quite happy for my peers to shoot down. I think
Love a
I
sweeping
don't think we're over-regulating cyber. I do think that regulation promotes best practice, and in some organizations that fig leaf is the only way in which we're getting really much done for cyber. But I do think the problem with regulation is that it is reactive, that it is slow to kind of respond to complexity and the evolution of systems. So I think it is, it comes along a little bit too long. And I do think at the moment, most of it is focused on responsible disclosure and letting everybody know that something's gone wrong, rather than on the actual prevention in the first place. And I think we need regulation that's focused and steers towards resilience, and systemic stability, building systems that are inherently solid and self-healing or resilient.
Systemic stability. I like that one, Jim. Like, you know, you all work within a global community, but most of you work for global businesses. One of the things always I see as difficult is there's so many different policies in different parts of the globe, so it's difficult to bring one in. I mean, how do you guys find that your organizations deal with that, and do you think there should be more kind of global responsibility in terms of kind of regulating systems and promoting cyber? Niamh?
You must have read my mind, David. Yeah, that's what I would think from it's great that privacy GDPR came in. It enabled uh, Europe to streamline and operate, allowed global organizations to operate, having it streamlined. So I agree from a cyber perspective, it can be challenging. It can be a barrier into new markets, into new countries as well, if the business don't take it seriously. I'd like to see some kind of a regulation that protects CISOs, to be honest. I mentor a lot of people that are trying to get CISO roles or that are in CISO roles. And I coach them around, being able to articulate their program, get business sponsorship, how to work with their CEO, their executive leaders, and the board. And it really varies from person to person around how serious they're taken. But ultimately, the CISO takes a lot of stress and strain, is worked around the clock, and they're always trying to get more budget. So some kind of a regulation that protects the CISOs, because I do believe they're probably the most vulnerable part of the program. And one of the KPIs that I set for some of the boards that I sit on was around the turnover of the CISO. How long they're there, what's the turnover rate. So it's a good measurement on the program in a different type of way.
Well, I guess that links into the stability thing, right? If you're constantly changing the CISO, that probably means you're constantly changing the strategy and what you're going to do about the responses. And I think if there's one thing I take from this whole conversation is that everyone's got to be joined up in terms of how you respond to these things. And because the threats are constantly changing, unless if you're also constantly changing your priorities, then that's going to be even more difficult. Is that how you see it, Rob? Making sure there's this continuity in terms of your own response and how your business deals with it.
Absolutely. You've got to have everybody, I mean, as they say, rowing in the same direction. It is really important that everybody's on the same page. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole thing needs, the whole cybersecurity program needs protection. You don't want chops and changes. You don't, and instability is in any area of a business. We don't want that sort of thing. So I think it's really important that businesses have a robust approach to cyber that, really embraces the team, promotes them, enables them, supports them. And I think that then enables that to sort of embed itself properly within the organization. You get the stability because, it's got the people within the business supporting that cyber role, whether they're in finance, HR, or business operations. They know the importance of that team and they make the time for them. So I think it's, it kind of mixes a bit with the sort of question we had earlier around, is this a board problem? Is it a technology problem? Bringing the broader business in is a business problem. We've all got to work on it in various elements. It affects all areas to various degrees. So if everybody is, as I say, rowing in the same direction, you get that stability, you get that support. And when you've got stability and support, you grow.
Brilliant. So as my last question then, really, this is, we are obviously reviewing where we're at with nearly 100 episodes in from the Leaders series, and been some fantastic and really insightful comments. So thank you very much. But I just want you to cast your minds forward 5 years, the end of this decade. And as cybersecurity leaders, I'm interested to see where do you hope cybersecurity will be in 2030? I guess you can take that in either way, that there'll be no need for it anymore and everything will be completely safe, or, the different ways in terms of how it's governed and run. But I assume you all think it will be important in 2030 because we won't have worked out how to secure our systems hands off, if you know what I mean. So Francis, where do you see cybersecurity in 2030?
For me, David, I think 2030 is probably a key point for the global economy to have post-quantum readiness in place. So I see a large mobilization that's orchestrated across the world where companies are trying to get post-quantum ready so that we are in a position to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data with the potential for a quantum relevant computer to land within the next 5 or so years. So I think that will be a huge focus area. In terms of the industry itself, if you had asked me in 2023, would AI be the prevalent force that it is today, I would have said no. But now, everybody has become almost reliant on it, and that's creating cognitive offload. And it's almost automating some of the tasks we do. And if you look at the job data, a lot of junior positions, the unemployment figures I was looking at this morning, they're creeping up in junior resources across the board. And when you look at that, it's accountancy firms aren't hiring an assistant to work up, etc., because AI can do that tasks, etc. So 5 years time, I think actually we're going to have a problem where not as much young blood has come into the organizations. Cognitive decline has become heightened because we've offloaded a lot of our critical thinking and creative thinking to machines and algorithms. And you will have portions of your environment that you no longer understand because it's black box operations. So I think we're going to be in a very, very different landscape. And what that looks like in reality, I don't think anyone will be able to tell until we get there.
I love when we talk to cyber people that there's this sort of slight Armageddon feel, if you know what I mean. So I do enjoy that. Rob, are you positive or negative, and what's going to happen by 2030?
It's a real tough call, this one, but I'm sitting alongside Francis on this one, and I love the analogy that of the organisation where the machine breaks down and they pay somebody £10,000 to come in and knock the machine with a hammer, and it gets it working again. And I feel that we're in a similar situation because, as Francis was saying, we are losing that core fundamental knowledge, both at a technical and an analytical level, because we are offloading to AI all in those spaces. And it does worry me that we're of a particular vintage, I think we can say, where we're in the last sort of quarter of our professional careers. I wouldn't say we're in the autumn of our decline or we're in the winters or anything, but certainly in 10, 15 years time, the people that have grown through the evolving security and technology landscape that we've seen, and it's been phenomenal over the last sort of 30, 40 years, those people are going to be leaving the job market. And what we're bringing back in underneath us is people that haven't had that core basis of experience. They haven't seen things evolve. They've come in at a different level. And I think there will be this problem of, the basic analytical, technical problem solving is offloaded to machines. And if that starts going wrong somewhere, it could be a real big issue. I think it creates another attack surface that we might have to sort of work out how do we defend against that. And that could be AI personas. We could start to create a persona level analyst or engineer, and that could be quite interesting. But I think where cybersecurity will be in five years' time, I think we'll all still be doing the same thing, but it'll be different problems, much faster than we've ever experienced before. But I would like to see, and I expect to see, a lot more coming together of technical capabilities of a single tool set. So I think, whereas at the moment we have quite diverse tools to do different things, they all work together, but we have to kind of join them in, and there's centralization of logging with SIEM tools and still going on, despite some of the biggest names out there bringing a lot of technologies into their own portfolio. I think we'll start to see really strong single sets of tools that are able to do so much and develop very quickly around the evolving threat that they're seeing.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. Jim, what do you think? 2030, cybersecurity.
So, so Francis and Rob have given the dystopian view of where we could be in 2030, and obviously
cutting above you there, Jim. I was going to say that Rob was talking about everyone being in their autumn of their careers. What I'm going to do just for you, Rob, is we're going to run the AI over it. We're all going to look 25 years old in this.
Perfect.
So I was about to say though, and in all seriousness, there are responses that we can have to some of that dystopian view, and that is increased diversity. You know, three of us on the call are pale, male, stale, grey-haired, white men of a certain vintage, and we need more diversity in the industry, and we need critical thinking in order that that we have a workforce that are able to steer that AI and not have the problem of cognitive decline. So the critical thinking needs to be there. We need diversity. Your question, though, was about hope. So what do I hope for in 2030? It's not the dystopian view. What I hope for is, Niamh mentioned data privacy a minute ago. In 2018, with the introduction of GDPR, I didn't think we'd be where we are now in terms of like the understanding across the workforce of the shared responsibility for data privacy. Like we've come further than I thought we would. And I would like to see that happen with cyber. I'd like cyber to be an invisible part of our operations that is less here's the domain where the cyber people work and it is all just a technical kind of discipline, appreciate it's the risk elements, but that all of that is more widely adopted across the business, and people understand their part in cyber, and it becomes this invisible, interoperable part of what we do as businesses, rather than a standalone function in the way that it's treated in many companies. That's a hope. Like it is that it becomes as ubiquitous throughout our organization and seen by other teams in that way, and is adopted across the business.
Brilliant. So Niamh, you've got dystopian or hopeful. So which one will you choose?
No, man, I'm super excited for where cybersecurity is going to be in 2030. I think just keeping it real, that the boards and CEOs will realize that their CISO is their most important member of the leadership team. I think that'll be a given by 2030. Um, but I'm also excited from the opportunity that cybersecurity has as an industry around new technologies such as quantum computing and AI. We talked about zero trust there at the start. Is it a principle? I think by 2030, it will be a reality through the use of AI and quantum biology. I think we've an amazing opportunity to implement zero trust where authentication, authorization into systems really know it's me through my unique body pattern. And I think through AI and quantum biology, there is that opportunity to make that a reality. And secondly, I'm super excited for myself that I'm going to have a cybersecurity assistant available to me that's going to be able to tap into my brain or understand my patterns. And before I go unconscious and do something risky, they're going to be able to say, Niamh, you're about to go unconscious and do something risky, and I'm going to prevent a cyber incident or not be involved in carrying out that risky action. I've been talking about that now for nearly a decade, but I do think by 2030, with new technology and new innovation and investment, we're going to get there.
Brilliant. Well, I think that we've got two positive and two slightly more negative there. So I think that is a good way to end it. I'm not knowledgeable enough to really say it, but I feel one thing I will say is that it's very great to know that we have such great kind of cyber leaders within the industry, discussing and pushing forward these points of view, because I definitely think this is something that is so important. And for myself as a CEO, it's always great to have people like yourselves around me, helping me to make those decisions, and telling me how important they are. So guys, thank you very much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get your opinions and again to kind of meet up with you. Thank you very much. Good luck out there in the field. Keep us safe, and thank you very much.